We are live, and welcome to another live stream with Intelligent Construction Opportunities. I'm Stephanie Brown, founder of Intelligent Construction Opportunities. We do these live streams so construction technology providers, like my guest Alec today, can show off the value of their software and the technologies that they bring to the table and why they do what they do. So today, we want to welcome Alec Thomson, CEO and co-founder of Riskcast. Welcome, Alec.
Stephanie, thank you. And I'm ready today with the "Hey, who are we at Riskcast" jingle. I mean, it's been great. I'm here in Nashville right now with my co-founders in town. So the two of us have been together for a couple of days. So I would be remiss to not start out. Who is Riskcast? Who are we? What are we? Riskcast is a production tracking, labor cost reporting, job cost forecasting tool, self-perform contractors. That's our goal. That's what we wanted to be in the industry. What does that mean in relevance to our conversation today and really the industry at large? Hey, let's bring it right down to the data capture of what we're all about. Who was on site? How many hours they worked? What did they work on? How many quantities did they install? And what equipment did they use? Those core data pieces bring us all those reports we want, and so much more. So that's who Riskcast is. We're labor equipment production for self-perform.
So I kind of want to. We talked about subcontractors. I really want to make the field feel comfortable, because as one of my buddies says, they can sometimes feel like data monkeys, and they're the ones inputting the data from the field. We kind of want to understand, like, if we did full circle, and those skilled tradespeople were benefiting from what they had helped to collect, can we sort of contextualize the subcontractor today in terms of what Riskcast is doing? I know you've prepared some really, in my opinion, a really good story of visuals to be able to take people. But as we talk about these things, I want us to kind of remember to contextualize around the actual subcontractors or the tradespeople on site. And let's get into the roles that on site really benefit, and the roles on the job that it's necessary for us to collect this information because of these outputs. Is that fair?
Yeah, it's fair. I think so. If I hear that right, maybe starting with like who are the roles we're built for, and how do we benefit them?
Yeah. So let's talk about the site, because I mean, I love your logo, and it's like you basically it sets it up, collect the data from the site, and then use it everywhere. But it has to start from the site. So let's talk about that a little bit.
It does, and Stephanie, that's part of our journey. Riskcast was designed for the worker on site collecting data, to be able to input data in a very speedy, easy, simple way that didn't distract them more than we had to from the work they were doing already. Like, they're out there to build, they're out there to swing hammers, set concrete, do those things. That's who we designed the product for. Now, if you take the challenge of being a construction tech provider, we actually have to sell to somebody in the office.
Yes.
And so there's often a disconnect between those two things. And what we find, a lot of solutions sell to this person in the office, but the end worker then has a bad experience. We wanted to flip that on its head. And from the day one, we said, what does the person in the field need? And if we can spend time and get that right, we'll eventually get all the data reports and cool things for the office, which we are now getting to 7 years into the product. For the first 6 years, 5 years, it's been all about the end user data input. We're finally getting those outputs to the corporate office the way the corporate office wants to see them. And the exciting part for us is the end user isn't losing. The end user is still winning, because it's all about how do they input data. And so now all we do here forward is just keep that great experience in the field and turn and look at the CFOs and the CEOs and say, how would you like to see your data? What else would you like to get? So we hopefully think it's valuable to the end user, but now we're actually bringing value to that CFO again.
So I know you've prepared some visuals, and to me, the faster we get into, showing what we're telling, is better off. So let's take some ideas that you put together. What types of data does Riskcast collect? And I think the audience needs to remember our name. It's Riskcast.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah, and it's Riskcast because we're talking about, in our words, forecasting your greatest risk on site, which is your labor and your equipment. You're a self-performed contractor. You are a subcontractor. You're a GC with labor in the field, swinging hammers. Your biggest risk is that person or that equipment out there. How many hours of work is it going to take to finish the job? That's what we called it Riskcast for. So forecasting that risk. The quick segue into like what's been done, and then show the system and what's being done by us, and maybe some other tools that are out there. But if you take an average production site today or construction site today, out on a project, folks go out on site, and a PM or a super can usually tell you how they're doing, and they're doing it today by walking the site, getting a sense for how it's going. So there's no data there right now, right? They're just walking the construction site. They probably have a labor cost report from last week. So they have a labor cost report from last week. They're walking the site this week, and they're getting a sense for like, yeah, we're pretty much 50% done on this. And they're looking at their cost report going, yeah, it shows about 50% done. We're probably okay. Right? That's normal. And that's a lot of experience. It's gut. It's very non-scientific. It hasn't been wrong necessarily a lot, but when it's wrong really big, right? And it's really risky. The thing that one of our customers brought to us is like, well, what about when it's right? Are you capitalizing on knowing that you're doing amazing on something and you're not? Because you're more concerned about what you might not be doing well on, and you're not capitalizing on the amazing. And what the data can bring us is both things. And so what's the data? And I'm going to log in the system and share the system here following this. What's in the data? You need to track, hours by activity code, right? That's just part of the data is like, what are we doing?
Yes. By
activity code. So if you're a small contractor or you do a very segmented piece of work, you may only have 10 or 20 codes, but it's 10 or 20 codes. You need to track your hours by those codes. The piece that gets more difficult for most people, and where apps fall down and where a lot of the early tools didn't work, was you also want to track quantities installed by those codes. And so not only did I spend 8 hours digging that conduit or that trench for conduit, how many linear feet did I dig? Right? It's not good enough to say I did 8 hours. I did 8 hours and I got 100 feet. And now somebody can say, oh, well, we were supposed to get 150, or we are only supposed to get 50. Like, we crushed it. We got 100. This is awesome. How do we see those together and actually in real time, right? And so what we need in the system, and I'm going to start sharing my screen as I'm talking.
Excellent.
In the system is, we obviously need your budget, right? So we want to know what we're comparing against. So in the system, and Stephanie, you tell me we can see my screen.
There we are.
All right, I'll keep going. So I'm going to log in. In our system, we need your budget. We need to know what we're starting against, right? So what are your actual hours and your actual quantities? And if you really want to get into job cost and forecasting, which we can, we actually mirror your wage tables. So for contractors out there that are union or certified payroll, we can mirror your wage tables and bring in your pay rates. Now they're permissioned, so not everybody can see those, but that'll allow you on the other end of a time card, once you're collected, to see not only just labor, not only production tracking labor cost, also against job cost. So actuals and budgets come into the system. People and equipment are in the system. So what's the data collection magic? And Stephanie, this is the best part. The magic is it's not magic. The magic is it's simple. This grid should look like every grid that everybody's ever used on a 8.5 by 11 piece of paper. I'm turning in a time card today. Who was on site? What activity codes? How many hours against these activity codes? And so this is on my computer. Looks the exact same on an iPad. It's provisioned for any of those devices. We have a phone feature. So this time card is completable by a foreman or superintendent on their phone, iPad, or PC. Down the vertical, it's their crew and equipment. Across the top, it's their production codes. It's their activity codes, work breakdown structure, phase codes. I got to think of all the different names we call them. But they are they're what you're working on, right? This is your budgeted items. Where the person and the activity code meet, we get a keypad, we get to enter our hours. You see tags come up. We can spend hours talking about all the things that are in the system, but these are things that matter if they matter, right? And so contractors may say, oh, we don't need any of those tags. Great. We turn them all off. Somebody else may say, I need 27 more of those things, and they're all available.
So I just want to stop you for one sec. So let's pretend who's the most likely person using this piece of Riskcast?
Johnny Bravo as a crew lead. So thank you for asking and stopping me there. We are a crew-driven time allocation system for the time card. So the crew lead is recording what did they work against. We have some other ancillary features. So we have some other tools that will allow an employee to check in and check out. That's a worker just checking in, checking out. But a crew lead, superintendent or foreman, depending upon your company's titles, is filling out what did they work on and how much did they get done.
Okay.
That crew lead, obviously he's on this time card. So are his crew. So is his equipment. We can automate how some of this comes in. There's really fun, fancy things we can do, but this is just the basic grid. Hey, I'm looking at a time card. I can click on a person and get all kinds of good information again. Information about the person, information about their certifications, information about tags again.
Okay, but I want to back it up a little bit. Just to back it up, there's two things that are coming to mind. So first of all, are they downloading this from the App Store and to be able to work with it on site? Or is it presented in some other way for them? And then when they're collecting this information that's already been inputted here, so Jennifer Brown and John Stokes, so on, what kind of a lift is it and who's doing it to populate the system so it has these details?
So the second question I'm going to handle when I go back to the main screen. And I started here on purpose because we're starting in the field with usability.
Okay.
But that question is perfect. The person in the field does not have to think about budget codes being entered into the system, crew being entered into the system, equipment being entered into the system. All that is happening via integrations, and we'll spend some time on that in the other part of the system. And quite frankly, the way we looked at it when we built the system, the most important person is here using the time card. So that other stuff always comes second when we're demoing, talking about, well, how do we get it all in there? We get it all in there through integrations or upload templates, but that's an administrator in the office or an IT team building the integrations with us. The end worker gets to quickly work in this time card and get out.
As they should.
That was the goal, right?
Yeah.
So on this time card, how are they accessing the time card? Via an icon on their iPad or their PC, but it is a provisioned web client. You won't find us in the Apple Store. You'll find it provisioned as a web client. So it's dropped as an icon on their iPad, and they click the button on their iPad and they're in the system. And it's provisioned to who they are. So if you're a foreman, superintendent, all you're going to see is time cards. If you're a payroll admin, you might only see time cards and payroll. If you're a project manager, you may see job cost reporting, time cards, and payroll. So again, provision. So as the user, you do not need to see more than you want to see, and you don't get bogged down with noise.
As it should be. Excellent.
The goal of keeping this is really easy, hopefully, for the field. Equipment, just like people, right? A quick little card. And then some real magic. If you really want to track quantities, which we believe people should be thinking about, more and more people are doing it. It needs to be easy. What it's been traditionally is a whole separate spreadsheet somewhere. It's really difficult to marry up quantities with job costs and labor costs because payroll has to get involved and it's got to go through an ERP. And then I got to cobble two reports together. That all goes away. What we're looking at today is if I click on the quantities tab, and we're going to let Johnny Bravo have the access to click on this, Johnny Bravo can now enter the quantities. I can say what happened today. I can put notes on it. I can go a step further and put notes on the crew right here as well. All the notes, Stephanie, everything that you're seeing get inputted, as you would hope, is available for the daily log. And the person in the field does not have to go back out and fill out a daily report and fill out a daily log and fill out the next form. It's all available. As soon as it's inputted, it's available. Their project manager, who's probably approving their time card, can see all of it.
And so what you've basically done is you've built a comprehensive real life. It's not a dashboard, I wouldn't say, because you've actually shaped it to be a time card that's backloaded, I'll say, with this other vital information, but all in one place. Is that fair?
It is. It is. It's a nice description. So this is time card. For the folks that really want to get into a time card, these can have lots of different variations on the front. The back in the day, we used to call it the skin, right? What does the front look like? This one has a column called pay classes on it. If you're a labor shop, you may change pay classes during the day. We can do that. Support the payroll rules. You might be in California and you need to turn on signatures. I can switch to a job that has signatures turned on. Suddenly I have signatures on this left hand or this far right column. There's signatures available. Every crew can sign. So we're following California law and protocol. We can turn all these things off. And so, hey, I don't even let Johnny Bravo enter quantities. I want my person in my office to enter quantities. Well, guess what? We can turn the quantities off too. And now the person in the office can just use our quantities log and enter quantities. But Stephanie, it's connected to this time card. And so they're seeing the hours on the activity code. And when they go into the quantities log, they're going, oh, here's Johnny Bravo putting some hours on these codes. I need to put some quantities on these codes. So
okay. So when you're talking about, sorry, Alec, when you're talking about the administrator in the back office, are we talking about, I don't know, some operations role? Is that more likely in your vision for Riskcast? Is that who would hold the ultimate permission to be able to turn these things on and off?
So there's a couple layers to that question. There's company settings and project settings that are probably handled by, let's call it a support team, which was what I was part of back in my old corporation. The support team, we're deciding, hey, as a company, we want to have these rules apply across our entire company. So there's some settings that get applied at a company level. Then at a project level, hey, this project, we're working in this specific locality that has these specific rules, or we're working for this specific client that has these specific rules. And so we can alter by project and say, hey, we have a few extra rules on this project. That's likely still a support team. Then you get into the approvers of, hey, I want to approve the time cards, or I'm approving payroll hours. And now you get into the more traditional roles of project manager, payroll finance team. You get into more of those traditional roles. So it's probably two different buckets. The setup of the projects, the companies in the projects are usually a support team of some sort. It does not need to be, hey, we have a whole team of people that does this. Our first contractor, when they got started and they have 1,800 people in the field, it was a project manager. It was a project manager that saw all this and went, okay, we got to figure this out. And that project manager plus one other person did all of this. So it isn't like you suddenly have to have a department of people, but we'll call it division of roles. And we'd call that's a support role for setup. And then there's just how the system runs with the project manager and payroll once you're set up.
Good. Very good. Very good. Okay. So I apologize again for
not at all
interrupting. So I see at the top, there's time cards and analysis and reports, setup and payroll. If you were going to onboard somebody right now with what we're seeing, what would that look like?
So if you were a crew lead, foreman or superintendent responsible for entering time and not doing the other things that we've been talking about, you would only see time cards.
Okay.
You strip that noise away, you just see time cards. If you were a project manager, and I might be going in to look at this time card to approve it, I am likely seeing at least time cards, analysis, reports, and maybe payroll, but I might not be seeing setup. Again, it's provisioned by your role. And so those tabs at the top, I'm a super admin. Our demo team does a great job of showing you. Yeah, our demo team does a great job of showing you a demo. Here's what a foreman sees. Here's what a project manager sees. And folks that are really interested in that, like, let us know. We'll get a demo team set up. Folks are using us. So talking to how what's the lift to set things up, I was mentioning a second ago. We have companies that have 25 and 50 people in the field. They're a small I say small, respectfully, that's actually a pretty large company, but in the world of general construction that we read about on TV, that's a small company. So they have 25 or 50 people in the field. They're a local contractor. They're doing their work. They're in our system. Then we have other contractors that are national and even international that have several thousand people in the field also using our system. Those companies that have several thousand, as you imagine, have teams of people doing things.
Right.
Company that has 40 or 50 people in the field probably has one, maybe two people doing all this. And so somebody like me probably has super admin rights, and I might be called a director of operations, or I might be a finance manager. And I suddenly have rights to all these things. But my crew lead out in the field, all they see is time cards. They just see what they need to fill out and let them fill it out and go.
And by the way, I mean, time cards, I mean, what a beautiful place to start, because at the end of the day, the field person literally at the end of the day only cares about the time card, making sure that the time they worked is recorded and therefore that they'll get paid.
It's like a secret weapon that was not intentional. When I say secret weapon, it's just a really valuable tool. We wanted the data. We wanted who was on site, how many hours they work, what did they work on, how much they installed, and what equipment they use. We wanted that to get to these fancy reports that the C-suite wanted. And when you look at those things I just mentioned, they are all on a time card. And so the input method was like a light bulb, right? It's a time card. But it had to be a time card for construction. And this gets to where lots of times the investors never understood what that meant. What's a time card? What do you mean time card for construction? But it needs to do all these other things you were asking about, Stephanie. It needs to have notes. It needs to have photos. It needs to have tags. It needs to have signatures. It isn't just, hey, I showed up and left. It needs to have much more if you're going to production track and job cost.
Yeah, well, that's a really good answer. So where do we want to go from here then?
Yes, I'm going to show you like probably 2 or 3 things really quickly as, hey, what does it mean if I collect all this data? What can I see? So as an approver, as a project manager, I can go right into a time card, click the review tab on the top, and I can see this time card. I can see really fancy things behind the screens of like, hey, what are my quantities? What's my production level? I can look at my production level right from the time card. I can even decide, hey, I want to teach my foreman how to look at this. So let me take some stuff out of here versus keep it all in here. And I, as a project manager, can talk to my foreman and say, hey, how are we doing right here? This was the plan. This is how we're doing compared to what we thought the plan was, gains and losses, without spending too much time in it all. It's here. So as a project manager, I have access here. I can show a superintendent or foreman in the field why I'm concerned about this. We can talk about it. That's one place. I'm going to click back out of there, and I'm going to go back to my main screen. So I'm going to click on the Riskcast at the top left. I'm back in my main screen.
Mm-hmm.
And I mentioned you can enter quantities from a different place. I'm going to click on the production quantities screen. I'm going to select all projects, and I'm now looking at period quantities. I'm looking at to date. So let me bring a week that has some data in it. And what I'm going to bring in is information from time cards now at all projects. Probably I should have just picked the new bridge project I was working on, where I've got data. Yeah.
I'm just thinking as you're doing this, who are you trusting to put the right numbers in? So, for example, 150 relayed today versus, 250.
So this is a debate for a company to figure out, not Riskcast. Riskcast gives you the opportunity to do that at a couple levels. So at the time card, we're doing it, and I've still got a project that's got a lot of data in it pumping in here. At the company level, the project level, the time card, if you allow the foreman to do it, they have access at the time card. But where I used to work, that was not our method. Our method was the foreman's just entering hours. There was a cost engineer entering production quantities, or a field engineer walking the site once a week, updating quantities. This is the screen they would go into. And so this is the screen, but this is being fed by that other screen. And I'm on the analysis tab, Stephanie. God bless me. I'm looking at you, not looking at my screens enough. So I was on the analysis tab. I'll go there next. This production tab screen is taking from that project I was on, New Bridge, taking the week I was in, has hours for the week. And so if the foreman out in the field has entered those hours, which is awesome, but we didn't want them entering quantities. So now I have that information here and I go, oh, well, it has hours. I need to enter some quantities, right? I need to put some quantities in here. Right. So if I'm walking the site, whether I'm doing it weekly or doing it daily, and you have that option to do it weekly or daily. So again, who's going to do it? We understand this is a debate companies are having. This isn't a debate we're going to solve. Tech should not be requiring you one way or the other. You should be ideally finding people that want to learn how to enter quantities, right? That would be the ideal. Train your workforce up so they are better at doing this and the foreman can do it. But if today that's not your current state, have an engineer in the office, have a project manager back in the trailer, enter this information.
So where I'm going with this, and I think it's really important, as Intelligent Construction Opportunities has, a lot of construction management software that people show off. What's the ideal situation? Because to me, when I look at those quantities, that cost engineer on site, to me, I would think you'd want to have entities that had already solved that problem rather than assigning somebody who may or may not be as familiar with those numbers. Is that fair or not?
It really is customer specific. I would say the ideal to me, if I was going to start a construction company tomorrow, and I've been in big construction outfits. So in fairness, I've never started one from the ground. I've been in these big corporates. Mm-hmm. The ideal to me would be everyone in the field has a sense of why they're installing the quantities they're installing. And then as a project manager, I would be checking those numbers. So ideally they'd be coming in from the field, and as a project manager, I'd be checking and I'd be truing it up and down. Right. And then I would be helping that person understand why. Now, in this current state, if you've got hair on fire work and you're just going crazy, I understand it's really hard to upscale a foreman while they're just busy getting work done. So if you can get the hours by activity code, you feel like it's a win. I appreciate that. But if you ask me starting from zero, Stephanie, it would be, let's get the teams in the field understanding why they want to install 100 widgets or dig 100 linear feet. What's it part of? What is the goal for the week? And then how do I do installing my quantities? And the project manager is going to true it up. The project manager is going to keep the company accurate and honest. And ideally, that's how you next promote your foreman, right? Hey, that foreman's really got their head around it. They're not trying to sandbag. They're not trying to over-report, under-report. Hey, they get it. Let's promote them to the next superintendent job we have and let them understand a little bit more on the back end of not just the production quantities, but now let's start looking at the labor costs and go one more layer deep into how they can learn the project.
I'm curious, just from your experience working for the big guys, is there any reason that they would fudge the numbers, even if given the power to do it? I understand the project manager is the overseer, but is there benefit in fudging the numbers?
There's no corporate benefit. I think in history, I'm 52, so my years in the field were a long time ago now. My years in the field, though, were, hey, I've got a problem on code A, but code B is I'm crushing it. Mm-hmm. And I know that. No one else knows that because it's not digital at that moment in life, right? So once a month, there's a forecast. So I at least have a monthly window to fix my problem by just hustling on it and report a little bit over on this code that's doing good and under-report a little on this code that's doing bad. And by the time I get to the end of the month, it'll all clean up. That wasn't uncommon. Or on site, moving money from one code to another, but not necessarily telling the office just yet until you were winning. The want for a problem solver to problem solve. And I don't think it was out of ill intent. It was a problem solving. I know I'm killing it over here. I'm going to fix that problem over there.
Right. Yeah. Yep.
But as we got busier and as we're doing bigger, harder things, that really is risky because you can't keep your finger in the hole on all the holes in the dike, right? It just isn't going to work anymore. And what I believe, and I think the industry at large believes is like, well, you know what? We're coming to a place where the old school executive manager isn't going to lop off heads when they hear bad news. But when I got started, I would tell you that I'm sure I had that impression of like, don't tell the boss bad news, and don't tell him without a solution. If you do bring bad news, bring a solution. I think that's still the case today. If you bring bad news, but bring a solution at the same time. And so the answer would be, hey, I got an overrun here. This is going to go badly. Also, I've looked at the rest of the codes and where we're doing things, and I think we can win over here. So let's do the proper thing to me would be, let's do the budget rearrangement. Let's move the money from this code to that code. Let's expose our like where we're going to have a problem, our negative, and let's show where we think we're going to have a positive. Let's not change the budget there, but let's just drop some money into a contingency or take some money out of contingency and be very open with where it is. And then to me, ultimately, and this is me maybe philosophically, that project manager is now no longer losing sleep over that item, and they could just be more productive.
But I don't think it's you being philosophical. And I know that I went down a rabbit hole, as I typically do. But the rabbit hole to me is worthwhile because construction technology, as we both agree, and many of us in our industry do, that these are tools. So you have to look at them like tools, and you do have to refine. You know, somebody may be able to think they can get in an excavator, but if they've never been in one before, they can't generally operate it just because they've, ridden a tractor before, so to speak.
Right.
So this is important because it begins to hone in on who are the ideal clients for Riskcast. I think that's really important because they want to be able to use as robust as the tool has been designed. But I think more importantly, it calls out the poor behavior that certain people like Jesse Hernandez and the Depth Builder are trying to correct, that lean building and lean believers are talking about, and continuous improvement, because these are attitudes. And with good attitudes, you can apply the right tool at the right time. So it is a bigger conversation. But in my opinion, with all due respect, Alec, it's not just philosophy. It's a part of what makes these things go well or not. And so I think it was worth the conversation. So by all means, carry on.
I love that conversation. I'm actually going to go back to the time card in 1 second to even share what our customers have shared with us about how the time card is actually helping that. But I nosed back over to the analysis tab. I moused back over to the analysis tab where I was a few minutes ago when I wasn't paying attention, thinking I was in the production quantity screen. Again, access to this is permission based. But now I'm starting to look at, again, this is now, I can look at my production tracking. I can start to look at how am I doing, and back to having different things open or closed. You saw some things in there, like locations in there. I can have some fancy things turned on, and I can start to look at what the first thing I said was production tracking. So what we want to be able to do is bring this production tracking to the job site teams. So this is, as time cards come in, we get the production quantity information. We're able to do this tracking. Let me go back to the time card though, and I'm going to go back from a different way. Again, if you're a project manager or somebody with lots of permission access, there's a couple ways to get to things. I'm going to go to the time card, and I'm going to click back into that time card I was on and share, again, a story from our customer. So how are we helping that philosophical, in my words, and to your point, good industry change? How are we helping that? One of our customers shared was, hey, if I'm entering information here and I'm entering these notes are a place for you as a crew lead to talk about things. What happened today? And they said, hey, look, promote what you're doing. Like, hey, we got more work done today because of these reasons. We got less work done today because of these reasons. At the foreman level, the crew lead level, probably a layer below where we're normally sandbagging, Stephanie, right? Probably below that layer. We're bringing honest information forward because this worker now can show their world, their project manager, their operations people, their payroll team, they can show, here's why we didn't get done what we didn't get done. Here's why we got done more. And they can put it in the notes. And what our customers have shared is on their iPads, they're hitting the microphone button and they're just telling a story. And they're telling a story in their native tongue. You're able to see the information. As a project manager, I can now read like, oh, we didn't get all the doors set today because it was a crane blocking the delivery and our delivery got delayed. That makes sense. And now that PM isn't having to chase why something didn't get done. They're also not having to explain it. It's right there in black and white from the foreman that was there in the middle of the day doing what you and I both talked about at the beginning before we came on live, which was they're going to build the building no matter what. Work's going to get done. They are out there getting work done. Something happened. It changed this code. They're going to be able to put the story here. And what our customers are telling us is they're putting the story here. And that's now valuable up to the project manager going, here's the story and why. I can work with that and manage that. And it's helping bring that change of attitude towards I'm going to hide why there's a problem.
I just want to say something. We've got a viewer, Andres Mejias, a colleague of mine, and he brings a really succinct point, I think, and he says, construction timelines have shortened, giving everyone a smaller margin of error. Also, more and more owners are realizing that context solutions have given them the visibility of timelines and budget. So this is, what you're doing here.
It's I actually have issue with owners and developers. As a field person in my former contract side of life and as a content provider for the field, as we creep up the chain from subcontractor to general contractor to CM, construction manager, to owner, to developer.
Yes.
I become a little bit jaded and cynical about those folks. They're expecting a lot. And let's face it, they're all going to take the lowest bid almost always. And this is now a philosophical discussion for another time. But I would like to say, until we don't let that happen, meaning an owner wants all these things and there's somebody willing to do it, we're going to be stuck in this cycle of less time, more transparency, more digital tools. I always ask this question, who's paying for that digital tool?
So I have a question for you, though. I'm really curious because I guess I'm all about the philosophy, because if you don't wrap your arms around the systemic problems, even the best digital tools are never going to be enough.
Correct.
So what would Riskcast, how could Riskcast help that? I'm going to say it, and you can come from me if you want, the ignorant owners, and mostly they're consortiums and conglomerates and whatever. What would they need to be better educated on so that the systemic problems in construction don't continually hijack the stuff that people like yourself and other good people further down that value chain are trying to accomplish?
So two-part answer. First part is Riskcast as a software, we believe works in a way that brings value beyond the cost of the software almost immediately to our customers. We are replacing some things. We're integrating, we're doing some workflow things with payroll. We're doing some job cost things that are valuable where the system actually pays for itself. So it's not a cost to the company at the end of the day. We can have a bunch of different customers claim how much and why, but I think if you ask every one of our customers, they'll say it's worth the dollar figure. They've actually, at a trade level, they're saving money versus how they used to do it. That post actually even yesterday, 500,000 hours as a very conservative number, customers got back to project time based on using the system in July with Riskcast. That pays for the software. So now that this software should not be costing the subcontractor to use, and it's bringing them information that is making them more ready to do business with their general contractor. So when I mean that is, hey, I have who was on site, how many hours they work. When you ask about my daily report, it's done and it's accurate. It's at time and material. It's tracked and I can get it signed and I've got validation and backup. All the things that make a subcontractor then, let's call it defensible.
Yes.
We're bringing to that subcontractor in a package that is, I think, a net zero cost to them within the first year. What's the challenge, the bigger challenge, the second part of that answer is we have 6 different contracts or 7 different contracts, owner to developer, developer to, CM, CM to GC, GC to trade. We have all these different contracts with competing goals. And the owner at the top wants transparent data. Well, to get transparent data, let's say a subcontractor is using Riskcast, but 3 people in the middle are using Autodesk, Procore, and Viewpoint. Well, now everybody's going to hand system information off. And all to say, hey, the contract says we have to turn information this way. The owner doesn't feel any of the pain of those transactions. Those transactions cause pain. And I say transaction. The handing of data from one system to another is a transaction that is causing pain. It's manual, it's painful. Riskcast can do things in the future to ease that. We can do it today. But the reason we're not doing it today, Stephanie, is those 6 different contracts cause a culture problem of how we do that. And that's the piece that I think either we need to work on both things. The culture of those handoffs. How do we hand off data, even electronically, some of that culture of change. And then also as an owner, and I'll use my example from back in COVID days, because I think it was clear and easy. Coming into a building during COVID, you had to get temperature scanned, if everybody remembers this.
Yeah.
And, I was in Manhattan at the time, get temperature scan. I remember being on a contact call and everybody was all excited about all these systems that were coming out to make it really easy to do a temperature scan. And all the owners on the call were saying, yes, 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 yes. And it was quiet for a second. And I raised my hand and I said, okay, owner, when you build your next building and you have 2 bids and one is for 100 million and one is for 105 million, the $105 million bid includes all that tech. And the $100 million bid does not. Which one are you doing? Stephanie, they all do $100 million. They don't do the 105. And I'm not shaming them saying they're wrong. I'm simply saying at that moment, the problem started. And now they want to squeeze tech into the CM's contract, the GC's contract, the trade contractor, the sub-trades contractor, without ever putting it in the budget. They just want to squeeze it in there. That isn't possible today. It will get better and better as tech is easier and easier to adopt, is low cost, high value. And also that systemic problem starts right there.
But again, I still feel, and this is from my perspective, and I'll stay out of my own rabbit hole, but I do know that the more I do this with intelligent construction opportunities and work with the good vendors like yourself, and I could name a raft of them that have such good intentions for the tech that they build. When you keep running into these problems, you can only call it greed, because had that same call that you were all on and you just changed those figures and you said, well, it's going to cost $105 million and it's got whatever it had in it, and then you would have changed the number and said, well, it's going to cost 110, they would have gone back to the 105. So,
yes. And also, again, we are in our place as a content provider, but being fairly idealistic founders, we believe in making sure our software will help when that conversation starts changing. So we're purposely not building software that impedes that. We're purposely building software that would enable that. And also, we understand that it's a such larger battle that we get to be one of the people hopefully fighting the battle for it, but not probably not the ones that can lead it. It is a lot of different things way at the top of a contract chain.
It is. But I mean, it all, it does come back to values. And that's why when we stopped a little bit in the middle here and talked philosophically, when you can't have continuous improvement, you can't have lean, you can't have those things if you're not willing to go right up to the top of the greedy chain of command who, as I've just called out, if you said it was 110 and it was really 105, you still would have had all your tech in there. And that's the end of the story. And the other thing about the building, I mean, what's the purpose of the building, and what's the service of the building, and what's the payoff of the building, and so on and so forth.
These are all amazing questions and the conversations that we should all have more of.
Well, I was going to say, this is what we need to do better on social media. And I've got a newsletter out, a shout out to my constructive rant. I think I've got my next topic.
Well, good. Before we go, I do want to show, because I mentioned three things at the beginning.
Keep going.
Well, I don't want to forget the show. I mentioned three things. We've spent a lot of time on the time card because that's where we should spend it. This is where the data capture happens. Labor productivity, production tracking, which I just showed. I want labor productivity, which I alluded to in that last analysis. I want to get into and just show quickly what job cost looks like. And when I say job cost, this sounds like such a scary thing for a company that might not be doing it, but it's such an easy thing if the data collection was done well. So that data collection tool, that spending time on that time card that is made for a foreman or crew lead to just enter information really fast, how many hours, against what activity codes, what quantities got installed, what equipment they use, done. When that's done, and we at Riskcast do what you talked about at the beginning as well. We've integrated your budget. We've integrated your people and equipment from your accounting system, your HR system, wherever it's coming from. We've done that. So we have a budget in the system. We have your people and equipment in the system. And we also have your pay rates, your trades and pay classes in the system. We now can show your analysis of how you're doing code by code. And I can go as soon as, and this is really bad data because it's my demo data. But you can go through here and just look code by code. How are we doing? And you see things like we can export this to Excel. We can look at the analytics of this. This is now without having to do something really, really hard, which is what we used to have to do. Cobble a couple of reports together. They're a week and a half late. Now, is it even worth it? As soon as time cards are submitted and approved, this data is live because we have the budgets in the system and the cost codes or the wage tables in the system. I'm looking at live data, and we've added one next piece, which is actually the forecasting of this. So this is production analytics with cost layered in, and we can then go down into forecasting and actually cost to complete forecast for self-perform. So if you think about your self-perform world and what you do as a contractor today, back to Riskcast as the name, your biggest risk on site is your labor, equipment, how you're producing. You need to capture the data first. And you talked about data capture as we were coming online today. Who was on site? How many hours they work? What did they work on? What did they install? What equipment they use? We can capture that. And then all the fun things that are in the time card support payroll, compliance, regulations, corporate stuff. But if we can capture that core information and we have your budget in the system, we can bring you the ability to see your job cost analytics and let you start labor cost forecasting for your company without doing a heavy lift, Stephanie. This is just downstream. This is a byproduct of doing good data capture.
I'm curious, would the project manager have this on their tablet or on their phone, and as a exercise be continually inputting this data during the day? Like, in other words, it's a part of their tool belt, so to speak?
So no, typically the workflow is, hey, set up a time card, beginning of day, end of day, depending upon your work process. End of day, sit down, you've got your grid set up, you're entering the hours they worked on the activities, you're entering the production quantities. Might happen at lunchtime, but let's face it, during the day when people are walking around, they're either directing work or doing work. The iPad, no different than the time card they fill out on paper. They're not walking around on site, filling out their paper on site. Something that does happen on site occasionally, not occasionally, you see a lot of people entering notes in field books. Yeah. That's kind of the next thing we want to get to with the phone of, hey, you're entering notes throughout the day that probably ought to go to that time card for daily report. Let's capture those on the phone. But you're not walking around with an iPad trying to enter what's going on. No different than your paper time card today. You're sitting down at the end of the day and clicking it all in. So we do see product advancement coming for the phone, and what I would call pieces of the time card, the notes, the photos, the basic things that would then come together in that grid. So when I sit down at the end of the day or the next morning, it's all together in the grid. And all I'm doing again is allocating across the cost codes.
Well, that's good, because I was going to say, so as far as the future of data collection in this application, it seems that sort of picking up all that's so important, some important, probably not all so important, superfluous everyday day exchange data. And correct me if I'm wrong, but would there be an element of a chat bot or AI or something that is helping you to make, sense of what could be a conversational mess?
100%. We have what is a very nice structural container for time card. That structural container gives us the flexibility to do some things with the AI early, without structure, AI needs a lot of work, right? AI needs a lot of training, a lot of help. With structure, AI is much more accessible. So yes, we have a solutions specialist. We've already spent some time talking about this and how much fun it's going to be. Still, for us, we're a bootstrap tech company. We are not big invested back end. So we're building this thing methodically, patiently, unfortunately, but methodically with our customers. And so our customers are saying, hey, here's where we want next. And interestingly enough, Stephanie, those AI tools for data collection in the field aren't necessarily on their list. Now, they're thinking about them, and so are we. But on their list is like, oh, wow, I've got this other thing that's been causing me pain. Can I fix that? Or my people don't turn in their time cards. Can I send them a quick notification? Or I want my variance report sent to me every week so I can just see really quick at a glance what I'm looking at. There's all these really quick, easy wins for the data coming back to them because we're already capturing so much very valuable data.
Okay, and so I've got one last question before we close it up today.
Yeah, absolutely.
So for contractors and project managers and cost engineers, anybody who understands the value of this and are considering implementing this particular system, Riskcast, what advice would you give them to ensure a successful adoption and to maximize your system's benefits?
So I'm going to be even more generic from a company evaluating technology. And I was sitting in that seat at a big contractor. Before you even bother going down the road of trying something out, there's usually two hurdles you should look at. Will it work for my teams in the field? First hurdle. And you don't have to do a whole big evaluation of that. You just bring in somebody and say, hey, John, is this going to work? Nah, it's terrible. Done. End of conversation. The other one is technology stack. And you don't have to be super savvy about your technology stack, but you should know a couple things. You should just at least know if this fits in. So am I fitting in a good Lego block, or am I like hammering a square peg in a round hole? And that's a little harder to figure out if you're not a tech person, but you have somebody that should be tech enough. And let's figure out, does this tool play nice with our other systems or not?
I want to flip that on you for a minute, though. I want to flip that on. Okay, so what would be some examples of other tech they might have that Riskcast you feel would play nice with and enhance?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would even say most tech companies are not out there yet even enhancing each other. As much as we all talk about interoperability, the core interoperability is workflow of data. And so there's source data in your accounting system. We integrate very well with that. That's, Sage 100, 300, Vista, Spectrum. I think we're doing a pro contractor in Vista now. CMIC, ECMS. I'll forget them. JD Edwards. They're all kinds of
suspects.
Yeah. So we integrate with all these usual suspect accounting systems because they have your source data. They have your projects. They have your budgets. They have your cost codes. And depending on your system, they have your people and your equipment. So we bring that information into Riskcast. We play very nicely with those systems. The other systems that are out there we play in complement with would be like Procore, Autodesk, Tenna for equipment management, Activate for equipment management. There's some other Toric for BI reporting. Any other modern system should have APIs where we can play much more interoperable. where those old legacy systems tend to be more difficult. And so that's one of the ones that like, hey, we use Spectrum. And I'm like, that's great. We know how to integrate with that. Not everybody does. And I'm not saying you have to, but you should at least know if the tech we're bringing in as a contractor, I'm bringing in tech and I have company X on the back end and I'm going to bring in company Y. If all they do is this, you didn't help anybody. So make sure it works for John in the field. Make sure it works for your tech. That's clear hurdle 1. Hurdle 2 and 3 are the next 2 things I would do is I would absolutely test it. Just seeing it work on the screen from me demoing it. I trust me. I believe in me. We're bootstrapped. We gotta be telling the truth. But I remember building an integration and showing one at a conference, and somebody pulled me aside afterwards and said, "Hey, is that really legit? Is that working?" I'm like, "Yeah, it was in a live environment." He's like, "Oh, clearly he's used to people showing an integration that was smoke and mirrors." And so do not put it past somebody showing you smoke and mirrors. Test it. Test it. That's
right.
number 2.
Yeah.
Number 3 is pilot. And if you're a small company, smaller company, you can probably get away without even piloting, really. Testing might be enough. But if you have any number of projects, 15, 20 projects going on, I just roll it out on a project. Don't wait for a brand new one. Just get it out there piloting, even side by side with your current status, current things. Just get it out there. During pilot, what we learn, what we love to learn is how are we going to integrate better? We know how to integrate, but let's say you guys have a little bit of nuance. We all know that. You might tell us what you believe it is. So you're going to say, hey, we use this certain flag or this certain thing to do this thing in payroll. Great. Good to know that. I would almost bet dollars for donuts. When we go out on site and we're piloting, we'll find one you forgot. We'll find something you forgot. And so the integration team can now build the integration better because we've learned it during piloting together. So I would recommend doing those 3 things. Quick litmus test, then do a test project, and then based on your setup, do a pilot. And that can be done fast, Stephanie. That can be done in 30 days.
But that's a really great way to close it up, I think, Alec, because at the end of the day, and I say this to our audience, whether people are listening live or will listen to the recordings after, at the end of the day, tech can help you, but it has to be the right tech for you, and you need to have your input into the tech. And I dare say there's nothing else that you're going to be able to ever purchase for your project, right down to a rubber band that holds your paper plans together. You can work with people like Alec who are saying, yes, come and pilot, because you know better than we know how you run your projects. And what makes any contractor, sub or general, different from the other is how you run your projects. And the so-called secret sauce, whatever you want to call it, special recipe, whatever makes up your company's values and how you implement them and what you build is unique to yourself. Yes. I mean, everybody lumps construction in. I mean, God knows somebody building hospitals is not the same kind of person, contractor building football fields or stadiums or what have you. And maybe there's divisions, so don't get me wrong. But at the same time, your projects are your projects. And this is your opportunity to work with people like the co-founder and CEO, Alec Thomson, who says, come pilot. Come pilot. It's not going to cost you anything to see how does this work with your projects. That's what we're trying to accomplish here. So on that note, Alec, is there anything else you want to say before we wrap it up?
I want to just even emphasize the point you were just making. We talk about this. We talked about it 8 years ago with our first customer. They went, oh my God, you have made us a commodity. And they didn't say it in a negative way. Construction is construction. Every company has the thing they do, and it is somewhat perhaps unique. But what really makes you different are your people and the type of projects you do, right? Your people make you different. Pouring concrete is pouring concrete. It isn't not hard, but it is pouring concrete. Pouring concrete in a hospital, it's pouring concrete on a slab in a data center. They might have different tolerances. Sure, there's specs, but it's still pouring concrete. What makes it different is your people. What we really want to emphasize is we want our tool to make your people's lives better by not making their lives harder, right? You get enough technology that makes your life harder. Let's make your life easier.
And again, you hear us talking about them as tools. We know that you use multiple tools. This is a different kind of a tool. It's a digital tool, and it's up to you to decide, is this a tool that works for you? And I just want to recognize again, I'm going to call it Andres Mejias. He's thanking you, Alec, for our timeout. I think it was very well worthwhile. I know I poked around in some rabbit holes.
Well, we can soapbox that. We can schedule one of these, and we can spend an hour on that topic. And I'll bring some people in that we can beat up. I'll happily bring in some people to beat up.
Well, let's do it, because again, I think that the digital, I'm going to call them opportunities, are unlike anything else that you're ever going to invest in, because who says to you, I mean, I've got things in front of me right now. I've got my phone, I've got a mouse pad, I've got a mic. Nobody said to me, Stephanie, use it and come and let me know how you like it and how could we improve it. I mean, these are very unique opportunities that are being offered. And I get it. We're in the height of construction season right now. The pressures on everybody in most of the land is to get that project done before it gets colder. And, we suffer more issues with weather and whatever. But you tell us when the time is right, because again, that's part of why we're saying work with us, and we'll work with you back.
You got it. Stephanie, thank you.
You're very, very welcome, Alec. And thank you, everybody who took the time today. And by the way, who will listen to the recordings after the fact, because they're coming at you. And Alec, I'll see you on the other side.
You got it. Thanks.
All right. See everybody later.